Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Paint Mind Studio. Today we are traveling through art to Modena, Italy, where we will paint a beautiful winter landscape. More specifically, the Rifugio Fucchiade, a cozy alpine lodge located in the heart of the Dolomites. I will show you everything from drawing to painting using Winsor Newton Professional Watercolor paints, which I reviewed in my previous video linked down below. And of course, what is a winter landscape without snow? I will show you a very easy way to paint snow. This is a beginner-friendly tutorial, so stick around, prepare your art supplies, and let's start creating. Alright, so the reference image that I used for this is linked down below for your convenience if you would like to give this a try. So looking at that image, the first thing you want to do is see how you can simplify the structure. I'm starting off the drawing with the buildings right in the center, since they're pretty much the main focal point. So to simplify that, I'm starting out with the big shapes, triangles, squares, rectangles, whatever my eye sees, and not worrying about the details. And there's also this snowbank in front of the buildings, which you could start with that if you would like, but for me it was easier just to kind of work on the building and then add the snowbank as I went along. So I'm drawing the big shapes first because it's easier. You'll notice as I'm drawing this, there are more areas to the structure in the reference image, but I'm not including everything because I feel like they don't add anything to the image. So, I included what looks good and I excluded what, to my eye, didn't look good. It was just going to make the image more busy. So there are a few things that are being left out. Now I'm working on the snow that's up on the roofs, and it's very simple to draw that. You know, there's nice shadows on that snow, so when you're drawing that, just follow the lines of those shadows, and they'll become more prominent when we get to the painting portion. Now I'm working on some of the smaller details like the chimneys on top of the roof. And they also have a little bit of snow on top, so I'm adding that. I'm starting to add more of these details that you can see right in the front of these buildings in the picture. The doors, the windows. Very simplified though. I'm not adding any woodwork lines or anything like that with the pencil. The paint is going to do all that later on. I'm working on the mountain in the back. In the reference image, the mountain in the back is a lot higher, it's a lot more prominent, and it's not aesthetically pleasing if you look at it that way. You don't want this huge mountain that's nothing but white with some trees on it to be the focal point. So I shortened it, I lowered it, and that's going to ensure that the buildings stand out and not just this white thing in the background. So I'm taking obviously creative liberties here. And now I'm adding little lines to indicate where I want to put the trees, and also some lines to indicate snowbanks. I'm using a big wash brush, a big 1-inch brush just to get the water on there more quickly and to ensure that my paper stays wet longer. Of course, it ended up being, as you can see, it ended up being a little bit too much water, but it's all right. I just spread it out. It's not a big deal. I'm using Winsor Newton Professional Ultramarine, and that's the only color I'm using for the sky. Now, I've taken a mix of sap green and Payne's gray, just a tiny bit of Payne's gray, just to make the green a little bit more of a natural green instead of a bright sap green, to add these little trees in the background. And I'm just putting them in very loosely with my brush. I'm adding some vertical lines using yellow ochre, just straight up yellow ochre, with the tip of my brush to indicate the woodwork, the beams. Because in the reference image, if you look at the buildings, the woodwork is very visible. You know, these like stripes, these lines, they're very visible. So I'm painting it that way, since that's what I see. And it's easy to do it that way. And it's quick. It doesn't take a long time. So just vertical lines with the tip of your brush. But when you're doing that, you don't want to hold your brush at a 90-degree angle, because that is a good way to develop a hook tip on your brush. So use the tip, but always at a little bit of an angle so that you don't ruin your brush. Now I'm going in with some burnt sienna to add the midtones. So the yellow ochre is our light tone, burnt sienna is our midtone. And there's some horizontal lines that I'm adding as well, because that's how it is in the picture. I'm going in with a little bit of Payne's gray to add the darker values that are visible at the bottom of the buildings. And also to add some shading to the gutters of the roof. Here I'm showing you the details of these beams in the middle that are breaking up the building in half, and also the doors and the hinges. I'm just painting those in very loosely. I'm taking some burnt umber and Payne's gray to mix a sepia for the darker shadows of the woodwork. I'm placing that color underneath the roof line, which is where the shadows are the darkest. I'm going back in with yellow ochre as I notice other areas that need that lighter color. I've grabbed that sepia color again, and I'm adding the darker shades of the wood. And also I'll point out that I've switched to a smaller brush for these areas. I'm continuing to add my darker values to the areas of the building where you see those darker shadows. I'm still working with my sepia mix, and I'm darkening up these areas that have the dark shadow. And it doesn't matter if you end up covering up the yellow ochre or the burnt sienna, your light tones and your mid-tones. It's just building up values. So there are going to be some areas that are going to end up covered up. And that's fine. It'll make your painting look that much better. You'll notice that I've outlined the snowbank in front of the building, but it's not going to stay that way. The only reason I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that dark color doesn't end up on the area that's going to be snow. Because the last thing you want to do with your painting is outline everything, because then it's just going to look like a cartoon. That's why I pointed out. Again, with the tip of my brush, I'm adding these little details that I did not draw in with the pencil. I'm adding yellow ochre, a little bit watered down, to the chimneys. And while those areas dry, I'm working on this little tiny window there on the right. I think it's a window. I'm not sure. I'm making it a window. I can't tell what it is in the picture. And I used Winsor Blue green shade for that little area and some Payne's Gray just to add some little shadows. Back to the chimneys, I'm using burnt sienna again for a mid-tone to indicate these sort of little stones. The chimneys look like they're made of some type of stone. Very loosely. I'm using sepia to paint in the little beams there underneath the snow on the chimneys. And now we're working on the snow. For the snow, I mixed a very watered down violet using ultramarine and permanent rose. And a tiny, tiny bit of Payne's Gray to give it more of a violet color, a bluer violet. So it's very watered down, and what I'm doing is I'm putting that color on the edge there where you see the pencil line indicating the side of the snow there. And I've added a little bit of water to the edge to soften the line. And then on the flat part of the roof right next to the chimney, I just put the flat color down, very watered down. I just put little areas there where there's a little bit of shadow. It's like very hard to see in the picture, but I'm putting it in there so that you can see that there's a buildup of snow on the roof. I can't just leave it white. It's not going to look good if you just leave it white and plain. We're trying to indicate that there's snow there. So I'm doing the same thing here, same color to the edge of this roof here. And this little building on the right, the snow on top of that roof is the one that has the most shadow, so I'm adding more violet to that. And then I'm taking a little bit of Payne's Gray into that violet mixture to make it into more of like an indigo color, but it's still very watered down. I'm just working on the darker shadows of that snow by adding that Payne's Gray. But again, you want to keep it light, very watered down, so that it's not just this dark, harsh color. And I'm gradually building up the values. I'm adding some of that color to the edge of the snow here in the middle roof and on the left roof. And a little bit on the flat part of the roof as well. Just to give it more dimension, more depth. And that's really all we're going to do with it. We don't need to add anything more to this once we're done with these lines. Now I'm doing the same thing to the little bit of snow on top of the chimneys, keeping the darker area on the left side there, since that's where the shadows are everywhere on that left side. So I'm keeping the right side very light and concentrating the shadows on the left. Even though there's so little, these areas, but you still want to pay attention to these little details for the sake of the painting. Now I'm taking some sap green and Payne's gray to mix a darker green to add detail to these little trees in the background. And you want to leave white gaps to kind of make it look like they have a little bit of snow on them. And not to all the trees. I'm just adding this dark green mixture to the trees that are more in the front. And then I'm adding a little bit of that color to some of the trees in the background there for depth, to show that some trees are closer and some trees are farther away. Now I've gone back to my violet mixture and I'm working on the snow in the foreground. I'm working on the snowbank and I'm working on these kind of like sled marks that you see in the picture. And with a tiny bit of Payne's gray, I'm just darkening some areas, especially in the snowbank there, the area right in front of the buildings, and right in the foreground in the bottom there that I'm painting. I'm also adding, with little speckles, little dots, these little irregularities in the snow, so that that whole area is not just white, so that it looks a little bit more realistic. I'm adding that same violet mixture up on the mountain in the back. And there I'm picking up some of that color because it was too wet. So I'm picking it up, spreading it out, and just making it very patchy because these trees are casting these patchy shadows. And so that's how I'm painting it. And it's a bright sunny day in the picture, blue sky, sunny. So these shadows are going to be elongated. The shadows that the trees are casting are going to be elongated. And again, I'm shading in these snowbanks in the back, adding shadows to the trees, building up values. I started very light and I'm gradually working my way to a little bit of a darker tone through the use of Payne's gray. You can see now that it's a little bit more of an indigo color. And I'm doing that same treatment on the left side. I'm also very slightly outlining around the roof line so that the edge of the roof has an end, so that it doesn't blend into the mountain in the background. I've added a little bit more Payne's gray to my violet mixture. And I've added it strategically there to the shadows of the trees. Now I'm taking my fountain pen and darkening up the shadows. Because again, we don't want to outline everything. We don't want it to be a cartoon. So I'm just focusing the ink where the deepest shadows are. In the gutters of the roofs, where these darker tones are, where I put my Payne's gray, I'm darkening some areas there. Just where you really see these dark shadows. Those are the only areas where you want to use your pen. Then I noticed that the chimneys are actually casting these deeper shadows, so I'm adding those with my violet mixture with that little bit of Payne's gray, and it just less watered down to make that shadow a little bit darker so that it stands out a little bit more. I'm also adding that same color to that snowbank in the front, but just right in front of where the buildings are. Now I'm going in with my white paint marker to put in some highlights that I may have lost here and there in the smaller areas, and also to differentiate certain areas of the building, to differentiate one building from the next, because some of those lines are kind of blending in together. So I'll put a little line here, a little dot there for highlights, for separation, and also to indicate little details. There I noticed that the door on the right was looking a little bit too red, so I darkened it up with a little bit of my sepia mixture. And again, I'm grabbing that sepia mixture to add more shadow underneath the roof line to the buildings there to make it look more painterly and less outlined. And we're done. And now I'm writing down the details of where we are. Rifugio Fukiade, in the Passo San Pellegrino area of Moeno, Italy in the Dolomites. I'm signing it, and that's it. That's the painting. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you try it. It's a beautiful painting. You could make it smaller and make it into a card, like a 5x7 inch size would be a good card, for instance. So that's it. There's a close-up so you can see all the details. Look how pretty all that snow is. I hope you liked it, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment, a like. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.